Today is May 27th, 2009, and I am interviewing Mr. George Black in Houston, Texas. My name is Howard Dunbar, and I'm a friend of Mr. Black's. Mr. Black was born on January 30th, 1926, and is currently 83 years old. Mr. Black is my neighbor, and he's a long-time resident of Houston, Texas. My first question for Mr. Black is, what was the war where you served, Mr. Black?
I served in World War II in the Pacific Theater.
What was your branch of service?
I was in the communication service of the United States Navy.
Excellent. And Mr. Black, what was your last military rank that you achieved in the Navy?
I was a radioman third class. That's the enlisted rank.
And what were the dates of service that you were in the Navy?
I joined the Navy on my birthday, January 30th, 1944, and I was recalled to go get a physical and report to duty at Camp Wallace, Texas. And I arrived in Camp Wallace in June of 1944 for 6 weeks of boot camp training.
How did you happen to choose the Navy as your branch of service during the war? Were you drafted into the Navy?
No, I was a volunteer. I had made plans to join the Navy even earlier, but for combat training in aviation, I wanted to be a pilot and couldn't pass the physical. But on my 18th birthday, I was free to join. My mother would not sign for me. But on my 18th birthday, I made arrangements and volunteered and enlisted.
Excellent. You said that your boot camp training was at Camp Wallace near Galveston. Where did you go for your advanced training following your training at Camp Wallace?
I was sent by troop train to the Naval Armory in Indianapolis, Indiana, and was there from August until January, and was trained in radio transmission, reception, Morse code, voice code, semaphores, and I was not trained to operate blinkers, that is for signalmen, but I could do all of those things.
Following your advanced training there in the communications, and you became a radioman. What was your subsequent assignment? I assume you went then to your first duty assignment.
Upon graduation in early January, I was sent to California and boarded an aircraft carrier. It's in San Francisco Bay, and we sailed to Pearl Harbor, and I was put into the complement of the ship as a radio operator. At that time, I was a Seaman First Class.
You said you joined your ship in San Francisco in California and sailed sailed in the Pacific. What was the name of the ship you were on?
I was on an attack carrier, the USS Franklin, CV-13. It was one of the first Essex-class carriers made during wartime.
When you shipped out of San Francisco, did you all go directly into a combat area, or did you have a intermediate training, anything like that?
We went to Pearl Harbor, and there we picked up some more crew. We picked up Pappy Boyington's Black Sheep Squadron, a fighter squadron, and also a Navy squadron of torpedo planes and another Navy squadron of dive bombers. We had to train the members of the crew. We had to train all of the pilots, and we were in and out of Pearl Harbor on 5 or 6 occasions and sailed around in that area and trained these Marine pilots how to take off on a carrier and how to land on a carrier. They were already most qualified Marine squadron in the Navy, except they just never operated off of an aircraft carrier.
So the timeline on this would be that you left your advanced training, became a radioman, shipped out to California, then you boarded the USS Franklin, the aircraft carrier, went to Pearl Harbor to train these Marine pilots. That's very fascinating that Pappy Boyington's subsequent career is well known. And then that would assume that's the January, February time frame of 1945. Is this true?
Yes. After we trained the 3 squadrons and it formed an air group, we sailed to the forward area. We made several stops along the way. When you head across the Pacific, it's 5,000 miles across it. We made deliveries of aircraft to Kwajalein, Bikini, and we joined the main fleet at Ulithi Atoll, which is in the Palua Islands, just east of the Philippines.
So at that point, you're now engaged with your larger battle group and ready to go into a combat zone against the Japanese. What was the first encounter you had with the Japanese? What theater of war was that?
This was the campaign for Iwo Jima and Okinawa and the Japanese home islands. It's all one campaign, but there were separate battles.
Oh, that's fascinating. So the USS Franklin was supporting the Marines as they attacked Iwo Jima, and then later on the attack on Okinawa.
We were
by
in
the
some
Army.
kind of a support there. Iwo Jima was already invaded, and we sailed north some 11 days before the invasion of Okinawa.
Did the kamikazes present you all any problems like they did the other?
Kamikazes were everywhere.
They were.
USS Franklin was the ship that was hit by the very first kamikaze.
Were you aboard the ship when it was hit by a kamikaze?
No, this happened in the Philippines.
See,
I joined it in January.
I see. That's interesting. I assume that it's well documented in many newsreels and much of the war histories that the Franklin took a very bad hit in the last days of the war. Can you tell us about that when your service on the ship was at that time? Is this true?
Yes, this was the Iwo Jima Okinawa campaign. Our job was to sail further north of Okinawa. This is 2 weeks before the invasion of Okinawa. Our job was to kill all of the aircraft we could in the Japanese home islands. We knew where the airports were. We knew where the planes were on the ground and also in the air, and also attack what was left of the Japanese fleet in the inland sea in the home islands. And that was our job. And we were there on the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th of March. Okinawa was invaded April 1st. That's when the first landings were made on Okinawa.